guys don't know me, my name is Kendall, or if you ask the freshmen, my name is Megan. Don't ask why. But I am one of the summer interns here at Rock. Over the past few weeks, we have been going through the series of No Perfect People. And so for this week, I want to start us with a question. Have you ever felt like you had to earn someone's approval? Whether it's a coach, parent, friend, or boyfriend or girlfriend, there's always someone we will try to impress. Often, this means doing things we would normally say no to, or pushing ourselves beyond our limits to get the grade, achieve the time, or the score we want in a game. When I was younger, I pushed myself to play as many sports as possible, rushing from one practice to the next, trying to be the best at every sport I could. My body constantly ached, but I ignored the pain. During spring break of my freshman year, I broke my arm on a trip, just as swim season was beginning to ramp up. Eager to get back in the pool, I asked my orthopedist for a waterproof cast. Waterproof casts are designed for the occasional shower, occasional recreational swim, not for consistent 5 days a week practice and meets every weekend. They're definitely not designed for that. But I didn't really care. So still, I trained and competed, hoping my coach would be proud of my commitment and that he would see the effort I was putting in. After every practice and meet, my arm throbbed, but I didn't really care. I convinced myself that the pain was normal. It was just part of the healing process. At my next appointment, my orthopedist had told me the bones had shifted. Instead of returning to the pool, I was sidelined the rest of the season. No more swim. And I was devastated. This was my whole life at this point. I didn't know anything but it. Swimming had become a central part of my daily life, and suddenly it was gone. Yet, even through all of that, my first thought wasn't about healing or about my long-term health. My first thought is, what is my coach going to think? Is my coach going to be mad at me? How will he react to this, knowing that I can't compete anymore? Looking back, I realized that I had tied my worth to someone else's approval. I believed I had to prove myself by performing, even when it was hurting me. The truth is, a lot of us live that way, not just in sports, but in school, friendships, relationships, and even in our faith. We start to believe that we have to earn that acceptance from others. We strive to get that acceptance, not just from God, but from everyone around us. Maybe your story isn't about sports. Maybe it's about grades. Maybe you stay up until 2 in the morning trying to study for that test because you think if you don't get an A, that your parents won't like you anymore, or that you're a failure. Maybe it's friendships. You laugh at jokes that you don't actually think are funny, or you say something just to fit in. Maybe it's social media. You post things hoping that one boy or girl will see it, or posting things to get likes because those are attached to our self-worth nowadays. Or maybe it's something no one else sees. Maybe you're constantly trying to prove to your parents that you're successful enough, smart enough, responsible enough. Maybe it's that you are able to get that driver's license at 16. Whatever it is, so many of us spend our lives chasing approval that can never truly satisfy us. Approval that we'll constantly want more of. Approval that comes from friends and those around us, not from high up. But that's exactly where the gospel gives us a different message. I want to bring you all in to Romans 10, because these verses remind us that our relationship with God isn't built on earning his approval. It's built on faith in what Jesus has already done for us. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to open up to Romans 10, verses 8 through 13. This says, "The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. For the scripture says, everyone who believes in him will not be put to shame. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." So through this passage, Paul is reminding us that God's plan has never been built on being the perfect people. It has been built on God's mercy, his grace, and his faithfulness. The message of Romans 9 through 11 is simple. God does not save perfect people, which brings me to my first point if you're following along in our notes. God saves people who trust in him. God makes a choice based on his grace and not on human perfection. It doesn't matter that test score or that grade you got in a class, that time you achieved or that score you achieved in a game. It's all based on God who saves. Romans 9, verses 10 through 16 says, "And not only so, but also when Rebekah had conceived children by one man, our forefather Isaac, though they were not yet born and had done nothing, either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works, but because of him who calls," she was told. "The older will serve the younger, as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. What shall we say then? Is there injustice on God's part? By no means, for he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. So then it depends not on human will or exertion, but on God who has mercy." In this section that we just covered, Paul is talking about twin boys, Jacob and Esau. Before either one of them has done anything good or bad, God chose Jacob according to his purpose. Jacob was a deceiver and often was manipulating others. He'd be seen as far from the perfect person, but God still used him, just like how God can use us. None of us are the perfect person. None of us are perfect. We all lie, we all deceive at some point in our lives, we all manipulate at some point, but God still uses us. Which makes this message clear, that God's blessings are not earned by being perfect. And we see many examples of this throughout the Bible, as nobody was perfect. We saw Abraham, who had lied, David, who sinned often, Peter, who denied Christ, Moses, who doubted, Paul, who persecuted the Christians. But yet, God still worked through every single one of them, and he can still work through us. Which brings us to our second point. Our salvation is not based on our perfection, but on God's mercy and forgiveness continuously. I love that word continuously because it really says it's not ending. Nothing you ever do will mess it up. God's mercy and forgiveness is continuous. Paul says it does not depend on human desire or effort, but on God's mercy. In Romans chapters 9 through 11, Paul contrasts two different approaches to God, self-righteousness and faith. In Romans 10:3, he writes, "For being ignorant of the righteousness of God and seeking to establish their own, they did not submit to God's righteousness." The problem wasn't that the people cared about being righteous. The problem was they were trying to make themselves righteous. They believed they could earn God's approval through their own actions instead of trusting what God had already done through Jesus. If we're honest, we often do the same thing. All of us, everyone in here does the same thing. We seek that. We compare ourselves to other people, point out someone else's mistakes, or rely on our own accomplishments to feel like we're good enough. We look for anything that makes us feel more deserving than someone else, trying to find a way to be better than the person next to us or that person who might have went to Tahoe this weekend or something, anything. But Paul says that's not the response God desires. Instead, God calls us to respond in faith. In Romans 10:13, Paul says, "For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." I specifically highlighted the word everyone here because I love that word. It reminds us that no one earns salvation and no one is beyond God's grace. We aren't better than the person who didn't come tonight or the person who chose to go out and party. Every one of us stands in need of Jesus. The promise is simple, and it's a powerful promise. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. It doesn't say they might be saved, or that they have to prove themselves first, or they have to do something grand or something great to be saved. It says they will be saved. Our hope isn't found in our performance, but in placing our faith in Christ. Think about every relationship you've ever had. Most relationships involve some level of performance. In school, you earn grades. In sports, you earn a playing time. At work, you earn a paycheck. Even friendships, they often feel like we have to earn acceptance. We have to say things, we have to talk bad about people just to get the approval of our friends. So naturally, we all have this assumption that our relationship with God works the same way, that we have to read our Bibles enough, that we have to come to church enough. If I stop struggling, I'll be a better Christian. If I come to Rock, I'll be a better Christian. But the gospel completely flips this thinking upside down of trying to be perfect. God doesn't love us because we've become good enough. He loved us while we were still sinners. We don't obey so that God will love us. We obey because he already does. We carry this pride of how we live and trying to be better than someone else, which brings me to our third point. Pride has no stance when we are all imperfect people. In Romans 11:17 through 21, Paul describes believers as branches grafted into an olive tree, but he warns against arrogance. Why? Because every believer, every single one of you, every single person here and outside of here, stands by grace alone. We don't stand by perfection. We don't stand by anything other than God's grace alone. Nobody, rather Jew nor Gentile, earned their place. Nobody deserves salvation, but everyone comes to God through his mercy. His mercy. Nobody else. We as believers seem to forget when we were once in those shoes, in a place of disbelief, or a place where we struggled with our faith. The church is not an art museum where we stare and look at perfect people, wishing that we were them in those pictures and those paintings at the art museum. The church is a hospital where we are all broken and in need of Christ's transformation daily. I'm going to say that part again because that's really an important part. The church is not an art museum where we stare and look at perfect people, wishing we were them. The church is a hospital. We are all broken, every single one of us, and in need of Christ's transformation daily. The times where we believe we are sitting comfortably in our faith are often when we need to turn to God most. For everyone here, it's easy to settle into the comfort of the couch, wrapped up in our own routines, in the Danville lifestyle. But what if, instead, we asked ourselves, who could I be encouraging right now? Who could I be serving? Maybe it's reaching out to someone who's struggling, checking in on a friend, or simply asking, how can I pray for you? Which is our next point. It seems like such a simple question, such a basic question that everyone's heard in their lives, yet it carries so much weight. It invites vulnerability. It offers comfort. And it reminds someone they don't have to carry their burdens alone. Sometimes the smallest act of reaching out can become one of the most meaningful expressions of love. Everyone's just waiting to be reached out to because they don't want to burden someone else. After this, I want to be vulnerable, but I'm going to acknowledge that this will be heavy to some. So I want to tell you how through this simple question of how can I pray for you, God has changed my life. Before God entered my life, I struggled. Anxiety, depression, anorexia, suicidal thoughts. My anxiety affects every conversation I have as I overthink if I said the right thing or how the conversation could have gone differently after, what I could have said to help someone out more. It causes me to struggle to focus in class because my mind will think about a million other things going on or about a conversation I'm going to have later and how I want it to go. My depression makes it hard to move some days, makes me shut off from my friends and my loved ones at home, makes me not want to wake up some mornings. I live in a constant fear that I'm burdening someone when I talk about my problems or something that's going on in my life. I fear that I'm going to lose someone because I told them what's going on in my life and they're going to view me differently. My anorexia causes me to worry what people would think if I eat quote unquote a lot, or when I have to track how many calories are in food because I'm required to send those to my coach. One of the hardest parts about depression though, it's not even the sadness, it's the isolation. I convince myself that nobody wants to hear what I'm carrying. I become really good at saying, I'm fine, or showing up with a smile, showing up wherever it's needed, whenever anyone else needs it. But inside, I feel exhausted. I think if anyone really knew what was going on in my mind, that they would think less of me, that they would think I'm not as good of a person or that they would not want to know me anymore. I believe I have to clean myself up before I could come to God. When I got baptized in January of 2025, I thought that would change me and that I'd be perfect after doing so, that there would be some switch that automatically flipped. But while that may be true in some cases, that's not honestly that true because we have to work for it. But what I can say is that while at Forest Home, I had the privilege of celebrating 2 years since my last attempt. Now, while I tell you this story is because while at camp, that day marked 2 years of many things. It was looming hard on me of many anniversaries, both good and bad. It also marked the anniversary of my friend passing from cancer. So I was having a really hard day. But I put on a smile, I put on a happy face, and pretended like all was fine. While sitting in worship that one night, I had a woman who I now consider a best friend. Her name is Megan. She worked at the camp, and during worship, simply asked, "How can I pray for you?" She didn't have to do this for me. Her job didn't require her to come up and ask me about my life. She did this out of love and care for me as a human. She saw me as a human, something I don't often see myself as, something I feel as when I feel more of an object. She saw me as a human. And before I was even able to get words out of my mouth, I started crying. Nobody had really asked me that question before. I was just overcome with tears. And for anyone who knows me, I'm not a big crier. So I was raised in a household that doesn't cry, so for me to cry is something huge. But I was overcome with tears because God knew that was what I needed right in that moment. And God showed up at one of the hardest times. I'm far from the perfect person. And I thought God could never forgive me for my depression and my anorexia and my anxiety and my suicidal ideations. I thought these were things that I could never talk to God about. However, once I started talking to Megan more, she started telling me her story of how she struggled with depression and anxiety. However, and looking at her, she was the most smiley, happiest person I'd ever seen. And I was just overcome with the thoughts of, wow, is this what God could do in my life? Could I be this happy and inspiring person like her? Is this a possibility? For a long time, I've struggled with depression and carried the weight of believing my sins and my struggles were too much to bring to God. I knew He was loving and forgiving, but I had a hard time believing that mercy was really for me. And I don't think this is an uncommon thing. I think many of us struggle to believe that mercy is for us. But guys, I'm here to tell you that mercy, it is for you. At camp, having her ask me that simple question of how can I pray for you opened the door for me to be honest about what I'd been carrying, something I don't do often. Honesty to her, but more importantly, honesty to God. Through that conversation, God met me in a way I didn't expect, a way that I didn't know was possible. He met me down on my level, where I was prepared to be, versus me trying to get up to His level. As I listened to her story and saw the joy, the mercy, and the grace God had given her, I began to realize His forgiveness wasn't reserved for other people. His forgiveness was for me too. His forgiveness, it was for me and for everyone. Before we left camp, she drew a smiley face on both of our hands. She told me that whenever I was struggling, I should draw one on my hand, text her to do the same, and every time I looked at it, pray about what was right in front of me. She didn't know how much I struggled to pray. I forget to pray often. I feel like I don't know how to pray. It's something I've always struggled with is how do I pray? But she drew this on my hand. It was a simple reminder that I didn't have to carry everything alone. God cared about the burdens I faced each day. When I looked at that, I had to pray. God cared about the burdens, and I could bring those burdens to Him. When I got home, I had that smiley face tattooed on my hand, and now every time I see it, I'm reminded that God's mercy, it's greater than my doubts. Whenever I want to doubt God, I look at this thing. It automatically makes me happier because I think about the friendships, I think about the meaning behind it, I think about the possibilities of my life. His forgiveness, it's always available. His joy is something he freely gives, even in the middle of my struggles. His joy is free, and it's available to us every day. But how often do we choose to use it? How often do we choose to turn to God in our struggles? What began as one quick and honest conversation became a lasting reminder that God meets us with grace when we come to him. We just have to come to him, which is something a lot of us struggle with. But I'm telling y'all, when you come to him, it's so much easier. It makes your life so much better. This moment at camp changed me. It was a sign from God I had been waiting for, as I had been navigating a bunch of tough decisions that I hadn't told anyone about. I even decided after this moment to switch colleges to a Christian school. God had answered my prayers. He had given me clarity. Prayers that I'd been praying for months, things I was too scared to do. They always warn you, transferring, you should never transfer because you'll never have friends or you'll never have community. But God gave me that clarity. He answered my prayers. He showed me things I didn't even know I needed. He offered new friendships, people I could lean on, but also people who could lean on me. He offered his mercy. Now, I don't share this story to say, yay, look at me, look at what I've done. I share this story to say, even though I'm standing in front of you, speaking this message, I still need mercy. Kevin, he still needs grace. Morgan, she still needs forgiveness. Your leaders sitting all around you, they still need mercy. All of these mentors and leaders in your life, they still need the same mercy and forgiveness from God. We may look like we have all our lives perfectly together. I may be standing up here, but the truth is, I've only been coming to church for 2 years. I've only had the privilege of really knowing God for less than that. I wasn't raised to really know God. I had honestly said that God was stupid. I thought God was dumb. But after an invite to church, that all changed. My point with this being, as someone who's only come to church for 2 years, I used to look at the people on stage, at Kevin on stage, and think, wow, what a perfect person. He's got exactly what God designed. He's doing everything perfect. But the truth is, we are all still sinners in need of God's mercy. I used to love all the normal teenage things, drinking, vaping, going to parties. I looked for things that numbed the pain I was going through, looked for things that would make me happy, turning to alcohol to make me happy, turning to vaping to soothe my pains. I was looking for happiness in boyfriends and the people I surround myself with, all of the friendships that weren't real. These things are part of the quote-unquote Danville lifestyle and are expected of you. And everyone does it, so it seems normal and acceptable. I made so many decisions that affected me continuously. Even though I didn't know God, he showed me mercy, forgiveness, and grace after I began to know him for the things I've done. Yet, I still feel the guilt of the things I did before I knew Christ. I know everyone sitting here has done things we regret, but I'm here to tell you that God will give you mercy. God will forgive you. We can mess up a million times, and we're going to mess up a million times. We are all sinners every day, but God forgives us. God gives us mercy, which brings me to my next point. God's mercy is the hero of our stories. It's not the mercy of my friends to still continue to love me after that and after everything I tell them. It's not the mercy of Kevin to still guide us after we make mistakes, after we mess up. It's God's mercy. We're all guilty of judging others at some point for things they have done, decisions they made. We look at others thinking, at least I didn't do that. As much as we judge others, God continues to show us mercy, judgment-free and without punishment. That was one of my biggest fears when coming to God, was I would be punished for the things I was going through, the struggles I was going through. But God's mercy is judgment-free and without punishment. We have no right to judge somebody for an action when we are all in need of God's mercy. We all are sinners. We all do things. So we have no right to judge someone because of what they did when they also need God's mercy. Paul reaches a conclusion that both Jews and Gentiles alike were disobedient, so that God might show mercy to all. It doesn't say that God showed mercy to the obedient. Everyone messed up. Everyone made mistakes. The Jews, the Gentiles, they all made mistakes. But God showed mercy to everyone who trusted in him, everyone who came to him. Paul does not highlight achievements. He doesn't highlight performance, perfection. He doesn't highlight the amazing things these people did. He highlights God's mercy. He doesn't highlight a time they achieved, a grade they got, a score they got. He highlights God's mercy. The Bible, it's not ultimately a story about amazing people doing perfect things. It's a story about God showing mercy to undeserving people such as ourselves. We don't deserve God's mercy, but God still gives it to us. It is a story about God showing mercy to undeserving people. Jesus did not die for perfect people. He died for us, the sinners, the broken, the lost, the hopeless, the guilty. Which brings me to my last point as we begin to wrap up. Mercy triumphs where perfection fails. We come to God as we are, and he begins transforming us into what he wants us to become. We come as we are, and he begins to transform us into what he wants us to become. God's kingdom, it's not built on perfect people. It's built on broken people who have experienced perfect mercy. Broken people who have experienced perfect mercy. Take the time today to ask someone, how can I pray for you? We were all in the place of non-believers, struggled with belief at one point, but God gave us mercy and forgiveness. Most people are waiting for someone who will care about them, waiting for someone to reach out, waiting for someone to ask them, waiting for someone who cares about them, holding things inside of them until it all becomes too much and boils over and they don't see a point. A simple question that shows care and comfort towards them could change that whole trajectory. Take time out of your day, today, tomorrow, and every day in the future, and ask someone something simple like, how can I pray for you? Think about what God could do if each one of you did that. Just think, all of you. What could God do if each one of you reached out to a person and asked, how can I pray for you? You may never know what someone's carrying. The person sitting next to you, behind you, in front of you, to your left, to your right, might look completely okay. They might be looking perfect, might say it's fine. They might have a smile on their face while silently fighting anxiety, grief, loneliness, addiction, or thoughts of giving up. They may be fighting the toughest battles that they just don't show and are just waiting for someone to ask about. God doesn't always use huge moments to change lives. He's not going to use a miracle every time, but the small things can be miracles. Sometimes he uses one conversation, one text message, one prayer, one simple question, one 5-minute conversation. That's exactly what he did for me. I almost missed out on life, the greatest blessings in life, everything that life had to offer, all of this. I almost missed it all because I believed I had to carry everything alone. I believed I was incapable of being loved, that no one would ever appreciate me. Don't let someone around you believe the same lies that I believed. Be willing to ask. Be willing to listen. Be willing to pray. God can use ordinary people to show extraordinary mercy. I'm going to repeat that. God can use ordinary people, such as ourselves. We are all ordinary people to show extraordinary mercy. If you are struggling inside, whether it's with one of the battles I shared or something else that I might not have talked about, talk to your leaders or come talk to me about it, because we all want to help you. We all want to be here for you. You don't deserve to suffer alone. You don't deserve to suffer in silence. You are not a burden, and your struggles deserve attention, time, and care, and we have great resources for you.